Well, I think there's two sides to involvement of people with HIV in the church. One is they themselves need to come forward and recognise they have gifts to offer the church, and they can do things that anybody else can do in the church. So there are no bars, there are no barriers, but the church needs to be giving that message, just as it's now doing in a lot of places with lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans people as well, saying you are welcome, we recognise that you have gifts to offer, and you're part of the diversity that enriches the church. And people with HIV and AIDS and all their experiences, whether they're men, women or children, can enrich the diversity of the church.
I think the key aspect in organising a service or an event or an activity around the issue of HIV and AIDS is to include the people who feel passionately about the subject, who are living with HIV and AIDS, in the planning, in the preparation and in the delivery of an event.
There's so much scope for involving people living with HIV in churches and ministering. I mean, for a start, it's about finding people who are open about their status and who are willing to engage in a positive way, because they could help inform some of the sermons.
Yeah.
And depending on, like you're saying, the different ways that churches minister. So, for example, some churches are very big on people giving testimonies, but you could find a person living with HIV who was quite happy to give a testimony in front of the church, but in a positive way, and this is how I live, and this is what helped me, and this is what you as a congregation can do. There's a lot of scope, and even informing some of the resources that they have around, just the different messages. There's a lot, and I think it's just finding those people. We are out there.
A group that I went to meet one weekend, it was of a group of Catholics, and I went over there to talk to them about HIV, and they had heard that I was coming from positive Catholics. So when I got there, I said, "Oh, can you tell us more about positive Catholics? Does it mean you are Catholics that are better than other Catholics?"
Positive.
I said, no, not at all. I'm just like any other Catholic. We are positive Catholics because we are living with HIV. He says, "Oh,
that's different."
But the whole weekend, they were asking a lot of different questions about HIV, and I was explaining to them. I felt, by the end of the weekend, they would also have a message that they could pass on to, the different groups that they would meet about HIV. I thought that was a very useful encounter.
I think it's really powerful when somebody who's actually lived that experience stands up and people can see that person and meet that person and touch that person and put a face to the experience. I think there's nothing more powerful than that. And I think it's good for Christians living with HIV to realise that that's something that they can do, even though it's very almost terrifying to begin with, because you just don't know how people are going to react. Absolutely. It's really empowering for the person as well. So I would love to see things like that happen more and more.
And I think as a priest, my role would be to support, to walk alongside the person at their own pace and see where it would fit within church life. It could be World AIDS Day. It could simply be, it could be anything. It could be Mother's Day. You could have a mother who's given birth and is saying that, I never thought I could give birth because I'm HIV positive. It could be anything within the church life. And as priest, all the priest or Christian leader would need to do is make sure that it's just done appropriately at the right time and that it's right for the person who's telling their story, but also the congregation. If they do have questions, they will have questions, then you need to have literature available. It could even be something that you've put together yourself. Here's some information that you can take away. If you want to ask questions, you can send your questions to me or so-and-so's afterwards and can speak or can come to home groups. There's lots of ways. I think you just have to think through the different steps and the different stages, but you also need to know your congregation as well.